As I stood before the Wailing Catacombs Vault, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to me like a shadow. My name is Lucas, a history enthusiast drawn to the lore surrounding this forsaken place. The vault was said to hold a dark secret, and tonight, curiosity propelled me forward despite the stories whispered in hushed tones by the townsfolk. Tales of those who ventured inside but never returned. The entrance yawned before me, a maw of darkness that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Ignoring the gnawing fear in my gut, I stepped inside, armed only with a flashlight and the determination to uncover the truth. The air within was stale, thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and as I descended the narrow stone steps, I felt a chill creep up my spine. Flickering shadows danced along the walls, and I clutched my flashlight tighter, illuminating the intricate carvings that adorned the stone. A tapestry of anguished faces and twisted figures. My heart raced as I reached the bottom, the darkness wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. It was then I stumbled upon an ancient wooden table, its surface covered in dust and scattered with tattered papers. As I leaned in to examine the documents, I froze. They contained a list of rules, each one more unsettling than the last. The first rule sent shivers down my spine. If you hear whispers in the dark, do not respond. They are not seeking answers. They are seeking you. My pulse quickened as I scanned the rest, the rules painting a picture of horror that gnawed at my sanity. Rule 2. If the air grows heavy, do not breathe deeply. The suffocating presence can steal your breath and your soul. Rule 3. Never turn your back on an open door. Something waits for you just beyond the threshold. Rule 4. If you hear the wail of a cat, the dead are calling for you. Ignore it or you will join them. Rule 5. Do not light a candle when the shadows flicker. The flame attracts attention. Rule 6. If you find an object that does not belong to you, leave it be. Touching it may awaken what slumbers. Rule 7. If the lights flicker, move immediately. They warn of what is about to come. Rule 8. If a voice calls your name, it is a deception. Do not answer, for it is not a friend. Rule 9. Do not enter the catacombs if the moon is obscured. The darkness will consume you. Rule 10. If you feel a presence, do not panic, for fear gives it strength. A cold sweat broke out on my brow as I realized I had made a grave mistake. I turned to leave, heart pounding, but the very air around me shifted, thickening as if something had awoken within the vault. I glanced over my shoulder, and my flashlight flickered ominously, casting erratic shadows on the walls. Panic surged as I sprinted toward the exit, but the vault seemed to twist around me, the exit growing distant. I could hear whispers echoing through the darkness, chilling me to my core, and I fought the urge to respond, recalling the first rule. The air grew heavier, suffocating, and I realized I was not alone. I bolted, the whispers intensifying, becoming a cacophony of voices that clawed at my sanity. I stumbled, the floor slick with an unidentifiable substance, and fell to my knees. As I looked up, I caught a glimpse of something looming in the darkness, an amorphous figure that shifted like smoke, its shape grotesque and unnatural. Rule 4 flashed through my mind. If you hear the wail of a cat, the dead are calling for you. The entity slithered closer, its form coiling and uncoiling like a serpent, and I felt the very essence of fear wrap around me, threatening to drag me into the abyss. I knew I had to escape, to find a way out before whatever haunted this vault claimed me as its next victim. I pushed myself back to my feet and sprinted toward the entrance, each heartbeat drumming in my ears like a war cry. As I neared the door, the whispers grew louder, more urgent, and the air crackled with electricity. I could feel the entity right behind me, its presence palpable, and I gritted my teeth, willing myself to move faster. I burst through the doorway, the cool night air hitting my face like a splash of cold water. The cemetery stretched out before me, bathed in moonlight, but the sense of relief was fleeting. I stumbled onto the gravel path, my heart racing, but the growl echoed from the darkness behind me, primal and hungry. I didn't dare look back. I knew whatever lurked in the shadows would not follow me into the light, but the thrill of survival was short-lived. The entity wouldn't let me escape that easily. As I dashed toward the exit, I felt a chill in the air, a prelude to the horrors that awaited me. I could hear the faint wail of a cat in the distance, resonating through the stillness of the night, a call to the dead that sent a jolt of fear through my veins. I pushed harder, the gravel crunching beneath my feet as I sprinted toward the gate, desperately seeking freedom. The moonlight cast an ethereal glow, illuminating my path, but the sensation of being chased remained, a predator lurking just beyond the trees. I reached the gate, fumbling with the latch, panic rising as I heard the growl grow louder, closer. I could feel the weight of the shadows pressing in around me, and I knew I had to escape before it was too late. The latch clicked open, and I flung the gate wide, stumbling out into the open. The air outside felt almost liberating, but the shadows still whispered around me, taunting me with their darkness. I collapsed onto the grass, gasping for breath, but the feeling of being hunted lingered. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, but the oppressive weight of what I had just experienced threatened to crush me. The rules echoed in my mind, haunting reminders of the horrors I had narrowly escaped. I knew I couldn't linger. I had to put distance between myself and the vault. I forced myself to stand, adrenaline still coursing through my veins as I turned to leave, but the chill in the air returned, and I sensed a shift, a warning that something was approaching. The growl rumbled again, closer now, and I glanced back at the entrance of the vault, its dark maw gaping wide. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision, darting between the trees, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that the entity would not relent, that it was biding its time, waiting for me to let my guard down. I stumbled away from the cemetery, my mind racing, but I knew I couldn't outrun it forever. As I fled deeper into the woods, the branches scratched at my skin like the fingers of the damned, and the whispers returned, echoing through the trees, a chorus of torment that sought to ensnare me. I could feel the darkness closing in, suffocating me, but I pressed on, desperate to find safety. As I navigated through the underbrush, I caught sight of a faint glimmer up ahead, a small cabin hidden among the trees. The sense of hope surged within me, and I sprinted toward it, my heart racing with the possibility of refuge. The cabin stood dilapidated, its windows cracked and the door hanging ajar, but it offered a chance of salvation. I burst inside, slamming the door behind me and leaning against it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The air inside was stale, thick with dust, and as I looked around, I saw the remnants of a life long abandoned. Faded photographs on the walls, tattered furniture covered in a shroud of neglect. I knew I couldn't stay here for long, but I needed a moment to collect myself. I fumbled for a light switch, but the room remained shrouded in darkness. The oppressive silence was deafening, and I felt the weight of the vault's horrors pressing down on me. I had to act quickly. I remembered the lantern I had seen on a shelf, I stumbled toward it, searching for a match, my fingers trembling. As I struck the match and lit the lantern, the warm glow illuminated the room, pushing back the darkness momentarily. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, but then I heard it. A low growl from outside the cabin, a sound that made my blood run cold. The entity was close. I could feel its presence creeping closer, and panic surged within me as I realized that my sanctuary might soon become my tomb. I turned to the door, heart pounding in my chest, but just as I did, I caught a glimpse of a figure outside the window, a shadow slipping through the trees, its gaze fixed on the cabin. I could see its elongated limbs and gaping maw, its form twisted and unnatural, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I had awakened something that should have remained buried. The whispers grew louder, a haunting chorus that filled the room with dread, and I knew I had to leave. I couldn't stay here, not with the entity lurking just outside, waiting for an opportunity to strike. As I prepared to bolt for the door, the lantern flickered, the flame dancing wildly. I remembered Rule 5. Do not light a candle when the shadows flicker. The flame attracts attention. My heart sank, and I quickly snuffed out the lantern, plunging the room back into darkness. I pressed my back against the wall, listening as the growl grew louder, more menacing, a predator circling its prey. I had to find another way out. I cautiously moved through the cabin, feeling my way along the walls, praying I wouldn't make a sound. I found a window in the back, partially boarded up, and with trembling hands, I pried one of the boards loose, trying to suppress the growing sense of dread. Just as I was about to make my escape, I heard the door creak open behind me, and my heart stopped. The darkness shifted, and the entity entered, its form towering and grotesque, the very embodiment of nightmares. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent hunger, and I felt its gaze pierce through me, searching for weakness. My instincts kicked in, and I lunged toward the window, squeezing through the narrow opening just as I heard it roar, a sound that echoed through the night like a death knell. I hit the ground hard, rolling into the underbrush as the creature lunged after me, its massive form crashing against the cabin. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline surging as I sprinted deeper into the woods, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. I could hear the creature's growls behind me, the sound of destruction as it demolished the cabin in its fury. I had no plan, only the instinct to survive, and I ran, weaving through the trees, desperate to put as much distance between us as possible. The moon hung high above me, casting an eerie glow over the forest, and as I ran, I remembered Rule 9. Do not enter the catacombs if the moon is obscured. The darkness will consume you. I couldn't let my thoughts spiral into despair. I had to keep moving, keep fighting. As I burst into a small clearing, I spotted an old well, its stones covered in moss. I knew I had to hide, but the feeling of being watched gnawed at me. I approached the well cautiously, the growling fading into the distance, and peered down into the inky darkness below. There was a faint glimmer at the bottom, something metallic, something that could possibly help me. But I hesitated, recalling the final rule. If you find an object that does not belong to you, leave it be. Touching it may awaken what slumbers. I weighed my options, knowing that I had to be careful. The growl returned, louder and closer than before, a chilling reminder that my time was running out. I couldn't stay here, but I needed a plan. I crouched by the well, peering into the darkness as the ground trembled beneath me. I had to decide. Risk it all for a chance to find something useful or flee without knowing what lay ahead. As the growl echoed through the trees, I made my choice. I backed away from the well, knowing that whatever was down there wasn't worth the risk. I turned and ran, heart pounding, praying I would find safety before the creature caught up to me. The woods felt alive around me, branches scratching at my skin, shadows whispering threats, but I pressed on, determination fueling my steps. Couldn't let fear consume me. I had to survive. I raced through the underbrush, searching for anything that might lead me to safety, and after what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a dirt road winding through the trees. Relief washed over me. Perhaps I could find help. But as I stepped onto the road, the growl returned, echoing through the trees, and I realized I had only exchanged one peril for another. I sprinted down the road, every instinct screaming at me to keep moving, and as I did, I caught sight of headlights in the distance. A car approaching, its light cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. I waved my arms, desperate for attention, but the car sped past without slowing, leaving me standing alone in the shadows. Panic surged through me as the growl grew louder, and I realized I had to keep running. I tore down the road, praying for another chance at salvation, but the woods closed in around me, suffocating and oppressive. I could hear the whispers growing again, calling my name, taunting me with the promise of despair. I stumbled, falling to my knees, fighting to catch my breath, but the darkness surrounded me, pressing in from all sides. It felt as though the shadows themselves were alive, ready to consume me whole. As I regained my footing, I knew I couldn't give in. I had to face whatever was out there. Summoning every ounce of courage, I stood tall, challenging the darkness that threatened to engulf me. I remembered the rules, the warnings I had encountered in the vault. Fear gives it strength. I wouldn't let it take me. The growl surged again, and I faced the sound, refusing to cower. The entity appeared from the shadows, its form shifting, an alien horror that seemed to defy nature itself. But as I stood my ground, something shifted within me, a flicker of defiance that pushed back against the overwhelming terror. The creature paused, its glowing eyes locking onto mine, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't merely a victim. I was a survivor. With a primal scream, I charged at the creature, my fear transforming into rage as I confronted it. The darkness roared in response, but I pressed on, each step fueled by the knowledge that I would not be taken without a fight. I felt a rush of power as I approached, a strange energy coursing through me, and I hurled myself at the entity, my body colliding with its mass. A brilliant light erupted around us, blinding and pure, and I felt the creature recoil, the growl turning to a shriek as the darkness began to unravel. The light pushed back against the shadows, illuminating the forest, banishing the whispers that sought to claim me. In that moment of clarity, I understood the truth. Fear was the key to its power, and I had taken back my strength. I continued to press forward, determined to break the hold the darkness had on me. With every ounce of will, I fought against the entity, shattering its grip on my mind and soul. As I broke through the veil of shadows, I felt the weight of the world lift from my shoulders, and the whispers faded into silence. The entity shrieked one last time before vanishing into the depths of the forest, leaving me standing in the light of the moon, the oppressive darkness finally retreating. I took a deep breath, overwhelmed by a sense of triumph. I had faced the Wailing Catacombs Vault, confronted the horrors within, and emerged not as a victim but as a survivor. The weight of the rules no longer held me. I had rewritten my fate. As I stood in the clearing, the moon casting a gentle glow around me, I felt the whispers of the past fading away. I had not only survived, I had triumphed over the darkness, and I was free. With renewed determination, I turned and walked down the road, ready to face whatever awaited me in the light of a new dawn.